Hey everybody, welcome back to A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I'm Joe Labriola.
And I'm Matt Wagner.
And today we're going to talk about the 2000 Iron Maiden album, Brave New World, the first reunion album. We got Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson returning to the lineup.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks guys. This is the lineup from, this album forward.
This is the lineup.
This is the lineup. 1999 was the reunion. This album came after. The lineup now is a six-piece. We got 3 guitar players, bass, drums, and a singer. So, from now on, this is the band. Brave New World, the album. Where do we begin?
It's a pretty apropos title.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Just, the first thing that comes to mind with this album is the return of Adrian and Bruce. I know I mentioned that, in the introduction, but...
I mean, this is the biggest change that ever happened to the band. I think even bigger than, Bruce replacing Paul or Adrian replacing Dennis Stratton. When both Bruce and Adrian came back to the band, it completely shifted.
Or even Nick replacing Clive.
Yeah, it completely shifted the course of the band.
This is, if you guys listened to the couple previous podcasts we did with the 90s stuff, we're kind of a little let down in some parts. Well, this album turns that all around. I mean, this is back to amazing music. Matt and I, as we mentioned before, are huge fans of this stuff. We're huge fans of the reunion albums, almost as much as we are, maybe even some more so than the golden era '80s albums from '82 to '88.
Yeah, I'd say typically I probably listen to the post 2000 Maiden stuff now more than I listen to the '80s stuff.
For me, it kind of varies. I kind of listen to both equally. It's hard. It's hard because it's really a different band. I mean, they sound so much different than they did in the 80s, in a good way. And like we always talk about in the podcast before, they're always reinventing themselves. And with Brave New World, it is complete reinvention. It sounds familiar, yet sounds different. And that's the beauty of it. It's not like a difference like the 90s were. It's like a good different. This is progressive metal now. What I had mentioned before on the Somewhere in Time podcast, which kind of set the tone for this album. You can really hear Seven Sons, Somewhere in Time, and early Maiden on this album. It's a mixture of all three of those kind of sounds, and it works flawlessly. You have Adrian bringing his progressive input. You have Janik, putting his folky kind of sound and spin on this thing, and then you have Dave with his really heavy, clean, fast guitar solos on this, and you have the return of Bruce Dickinson. His vocals on this album sound incredible. I mean, it's basically like Number of the Beast Part 2. It's like the return of him, and it's just, it blows your mind when you listen to it. It's fantastic. And let's dive into it. The return of Adrian Smith, Wicker Man. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Wicker Man, just right from the start, there's, say back in 2000, you went and you heard Maiden, they got Bruce and Adrian back, and you went and bought the CD, and back then, pirating music just kind of got started, so a lot of people still, first time they heard a song was when they bought the album and put it in, and you put that CD in, and you hit play, and, right from the start, those first couple chords of Wicker Man had to, blow you away. Just be that stuff from the 90s, it's gone forever. This is a brave new world. That's what stands out to me, we went, as we do this, we go and we listen to, No Prayer, and then we go and listen to Fear of the Dark for a while, and we listen to The X Factor, take the albums in, and you listen to Virtual Evan. So that was a couple weeks there where I only listened to the 90s Maiden albums, and then when I went and started listening to Brave New World, it was sounded so sweet to my ears. I was like, thank God that this is back.
Yeah, I love the Wicker Man. For all the reasons that Matt just mentioned, it's a return to form. And as we mentioned in, I think, the Virtual 11 podcast, as we close that out, this is the Renaissance era for Maiden. This is the rebirth of Maiden. And
yeah, I mean, the only way I can compare how it sounded compared to the 90s would be go to YouTube and watch a video in 360 resolution, and then put it in 1080, resolution, and how much clearer it looks, and that's kind of how it sounded, going from the 90s stuff and then jumping up to Brave New World. It just sounded so incredible. It's like,
yeah, and by today's standards, for those of you who don't know what 1080 resolution is, just think of like 4K TV. Yeah. This is like ultra high definition compared to, like Matt said, this
the 90s
kind
stuff.
of blurry, pixelated kind of 90s stuff. So
like the 90s stuff was like, there is bright spots in there, but like overall, it is not comparable to the way Maiden sounds today.
Yeah, these albums that we're doing here, these next 5, with the first being this album, Brave New World, it's back to the old Maiden formula. It's like they have an entire album with like 80 or 90% of the songs are fantastic, and then there might be like 1 or 2 that like aren't up to snuff with the rest, but they're still good. Whereas the 90s was kind of like the opposite of that. It was like 2 or 3 songs are good, and then the rest of the album wasn't that great. Like This is like the complete opposite of that. But Wicker Man, I love the lyrics. I love the solo. This is an Adrian Smith song. Love his solo in the song. Love the way it sounds. It's another amazing opener. It's an amazing opener to an album. I think it fits the album perfectly.
Like the thing that stands out to me in Wicker Man is that, like, compared to like the modern Maiden stuff, is that usually they have like that one rocker to open a song, and usually it's like one of the weaker songs on the album. At least to me, it's like it's not usually my favorite song that opens an album, like the rockers. And this one is like, has to be one of the best songs on the album, and it, in the vein of, I don't know, like Aces High or something. It's like the modern day Aces High of Maiden, like that opening song that just blows you away.
And as we talked about, like Seven Son with lyrics, Maiden really starts to get progressive, and they really start to focus on lyrics in this album. Some of the lines in the song are amazing, like the piper at the gates of dawn is calling you his way. You watch the world exploding every single night, dancing in the sun, a newborn in the light. Say goodbye to gravity, say goodbye to death. Heaven to eternity, pray for every breath. Your time will come. I mean, it's amazing. And like the little melody part, like your time will, like that's.
The song kind of reminds me of like 2 Minutes to Midnight in a way, because it has like a couple of different like melodic ideas that are like all really, really good. It has a chorus, it has a pre-chorus, it has, you know, a post-chorus. There's so much like going on, and then Adrian Smith has that, like, probably his most iconic solo of modern Maiden is that like Wicker Man solo. That's like his signature since like 2000. Even all time Adrian Smith, it has to be like one of his most recognizable solos.
I agree with Matt. Like, as a huge fan of Adrian, like I mentioned before, he's my favorite guitarist in the band. This is one of his best, and it's really reminiscent of like the Somewhere in Time stuff and the Seven Son stuff he does. You know, there's a lot of really slow building parts at the beginning, and then he just goes on. He unleashes. I mean, that's what his style is. Really progressive sounding, and it'll be that way from now on, and it's amazing. It just fits the band perfectly. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, like, Wicker Man, it's already better than, like, the first song that you get on the album is better than, like, 95% of everything from the 90s.
Another thing about this song that I love, too, is we talk about it constantly. It's about the cult film, the British film, The Wicker Man. Yeah. And it's amazing. It goes back to that horror element stuff.
It's classic Maiden.
So well. The imagery and the music that we always talk about. When you listen to the song, and if you ever watch the Wicker Man movie, I mean, your time will come. You can see it. I mean, it's like they're hauling you off, and they're going to put you in this big wicker statue. We're going to talk about Rock in Rio later, but like the stuff that they did in Rock in Rio with the Wicker Man was awesome. When they played Iron Maiden, they had like a big wicker statue of Eddie. Like, it was incredible. So
one of my favorite lines of this song is like at the end, they say, "Brothers and their fathers joining hands and make a chain. Shadow of the Wicker Man is rising up again."
I love it.
Kind of alludes to the band, like, we're building the Wicker Man again. It's rising up again. We're back. Because that's kind of like what the Wicker Man symbolically represented, was like a rebirth.
Exactly.
And like,
you would sacrifice somebody, burn them inside the wicker, their soul ascends, and the shadow of the
crops will grow, you know?
Yeah, crops will grow, and then the smoke from the wicker and the stuff burning is the shadow of the Wicker Man. Like, that's the smoke.
Yeah.
Of the sacrifice. But like Matt said, it alludes to Maiden like rising again. And it happens. It happens. Another part of the song that I love is the end when Bruce goes, whoa,
yeah.
Whoa.
So I said there's like 5 or 6 different parts of the song. And they're all good.
It is another one of those crowd things where like Maiden has the crowd in mind, and this is like a live song. And when we saw them live, we'll talk about it. I mean, we were going, I mean, like, it's...
Yeah, we've seen them, I think, twice. Twice they played this song live, and we've seen them.
Amazing. What about Ghost of the Navigator?
Yeah, this is like...
You're sailing on the seas of life? You may meet this character. Ready?
Had to like allude back to kind of like Power Slave. This is like a 1-2 punch, like probably the best 1-2 punch to open an album they've done since the 2000s, and like we also seen Ghost of the Navigator live too, and it's pretty awesome to see live, and
it's fantastic, man.
It also reminds me of, it's hard not to compare it to like kind of like Rhyme and Ancient Mariner feel too.
The piratey like sailing feel. Another thing I love about it is too, Matt and I were talking about this earlier. Yannick Gears like finds his sound, like the beginning of that on Virtual 11, but he like takes that and he just like puts it all in on this album. And this song is written by, Yannick Gears. This is part of, one of the songs he wrote. And it is disgusting. Like the riff, like I mean it's heavy, it's catchy, it's folky, it's proggy, it's everything that you want from Maiden. And as a huge fan of the Somewhere in Time album, I love it. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah,
it's a perfect song.
We were guilty of at one time not liking Janik as much as we liked the other people in the band. We thought he didn't maybe belong, on the same level as, Dave and Adrian and the rest. But, like, if you look at modern Maiden, I mean, he's as important as almost anybody in the band to their success.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the reason why we kind of, like, disliked him to a certain extent was because we saw the album that he was on. I mean, if you think about No Prayer for the Dying, Fear of the Dark, X Factor, and Virtual 11 as the first 4 albums of this guitarist without Adrian, you're going to be like, man, he sucks. Yeah. But it's not his fault. I mean, it's the way Steve wanted to do stuff.
Give Janik credit, and he writes like awesome songs nowadays.
Nowadays, I mean, on this album, we're going to talk about it later. This is Yannick Gears' album. He has 4 writing credits on this album. There's 10 songs on the album. He writes 40% of the album, and he has other bits and pieces throughout, like Steve songs that are amazing, like Blood Brothers, which we'll get to.
But you have to think too, like, I mean, Adrian and Bruce came back to the band, and now Janik has to be sitting there thinking, like, oh man, I'm going to be like a sixth wheel over here, like the original classic Maiden lineup, and then me. So he had to have been feeling like some pressure to like, man, I really need to show my worth to this band, or I might be out. If he doesn't produce, if he looks like garbage next to Dave and Adrian, he's not going to have a job anymore. So he stepped up, and man, like, Absolutely. They say pressure, cracks you, you become a diamond, and he became a diamond.
This is his album. This is his, Matt and I were discussing this earlier, this is probably his best guitar work ever.
This is another song, too, that with the way it's composed and written has those interesting ideas that I don't think, like, the 90s stuff had. The way it transitions from, it has an intro, and that like beginning part when it just builds, like it keeps getting louder and louder, and then it goes in with a riff. Yeah. I mean, like, that's stuff that you just miss out of the 90s, and that's what makes songs interesting. That's what makes you be able to listen to a song, I mean, almost 20 years later after this album came out, and it's still like awesome.
And I love Mythology, and my favorite line of the song is, I stood between the crashing rocks. The sirens called my name. Yeah. I love that part. I mean, I just picture this boat just sailing through this, like, chasm, and there's sirens around, like, beckoning the sailors to come into the water. It's like...
I love the chorus. This is one of my favorite choruses on the album. The take my heart and set it free, carried forward by the waves, nowhere left to run, navigator's son, chasing rainbows all my days. That's the way... Sometimes Maiden has a tendency... especially modern Maiden, of kind of like slacking for the chorus, and they kind of like, they'll do like repeats over and over and over again, which is fine because at concerts, like, people, sometimes like the modern stuff people don't know as well. So when you repeat the chorus, a single line over and over, the crowd will start getting into it. I understand that. But like, as listening and sitting there, listening to a song, and you hear like a chorus that sounds like is interesting and it's fun and it doesn't get old, like that's what you really want in an album.
And to touch on that, man, another lyric in the song that reminds me of what you just said kind of like encompasses that. The part where he says, nothing's real until you feel. Yeah. Nothing's real until you feel. Like, nothing is real in your life until you feel something. Like, we talked about Somewhere in Time being an emotional album. Right there it is. Nothing's real until you feel something for something. And this song is just...
I see the ghosts of navigators, but they are lost. As they sail into the sunset, they'll count the cost. As their skeletons accusing emerge from the sea, the sirens of the rocks, they beckon.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah, I mean, especially, like, we're going to do another episode after this, part 2, where we do Rock in Rio, which, I'm not spoiling anything when I say Rock in Rio is, like, awesome. It's what got me into, like, becoming a, like, a Maiden like super fan when I saw it.
Absolutely.
I don't even know how many years ago, 15 years ago.
Outside of the live After Death show and the Flight 666 tour where we saw them on Somewhere Back in Time, like Matt just said, Rock in Rio, not to spoil anything. Because he watched that and then introduced me to that, that's another reason why I became such a huge Maiden fan. This is the first DVD I've ever seen of them in concert, and I was like, wow.
And the first two songs they play are Wicker Man and Ghost of the Navigator, new stuff, and it blows you away.
It does. It's just amazing. This album is amazing.
The energy that they bring to the new album, like right off the bat, it kind of just sums up Maiden from here on out, that they're not going to be complacent anymore. They're not going to just put out mediocre stuff. That they're gonna do something for the fans and try to be interesting, and they do it. I think with their songs here, how they're structured and how they're interesting songs to listen to. Not only that, but they're melodic. They have great guitar work. Their lyrics are top notch. I mean, sometimes in the '80s, some of their lyrics were kind of, not that they were bad, they were just simplistic.
Yeah, a lot of the early '80s stuff focused a lot. It was awesome. But the '80s epics are pretty much what Maiden does standard now.
Yeah,
this is taking every epic and just making every song an epic.
Yeah, they found their formula. Yeah. That's the formula is that every song's going to be, or not every song, but 80% of the songs in the album are going to be interesting.
Exactly.
And then you're going to have a couple of shorter rockers. It's kind of the formula they use. And this one's this song definitely reminds me of a modern day 2 Minutes to Midnight mid-range, fast-paced rocker where it's long enough that you're able to have solos and make it interesting.
Absolutely.
But not on the epic level of, a Passchendaele or something later. It's kind of in between the two.
I think Matt and I will agree to this. On the old Maiden stuff, the 80s, we look forward to the one epic of the album, the closer. On the new modern stuff, you look forward to 4 or 5 songs that are almost epic. Yeah, that's kind of what we look for. Yannick, thank you for writing Ghost of the Navigator. You're the man. What about Brave New World? Now we got Davey stepping up. It was Adrian first song on the album. Then we had Yannick for the second song. Now we got Davey on the title track, Brave New World.
So we have all 3 guitarists, showing that, the band has 3 guitarists now and that they're all going to contribute. Brave New World is another one, the title track of the album. And it has, just kind of repeating ourselves here. It has really interesting lyrics, and it's kind of the staple of this album. It's almost you took the good lyrics of Seven Son, and you took the progressiveness of Somewhere in Time, and some of the old school feel, and you put it all into one.
I love this song, man. I love, like you said, man, there's no other way to describe it. It is it's a mix of everything that they've done that was good up to this point. It's
Dying Swans, Twisted Wings, Beauty Not Needed Here.
I love it.
Lost My Love.
Lost my life in this garden of fear.
Yeah, the lyrics are great.
I have seen many things in a lifetime alone, but that love is no more. Bring this savage back. The nigga's on the drums, and it's just wilderness, and Bruce is just screaming.
Yeah.
So good. It's Davey solo.
Yeah, I like that line to bring this savage back in.
I love it. Davey solo too, man.
I think out of the newer Maiden albums here, this solo ranks up there as one of Davey's best. It's so quick and fast. He just goes off on it.
And now Matt said, "There's one thing about this song. I love this song. Don't get me wrong. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. But the one thing that might be a little drawback to the song is the chorus part.
Yeah,
it's just in a brave new world.
It's
a
repetitive.
Brave new world. In a brave new world. A brave new world."
Out of the first 3 opening songs here, we got one from Adrian, one from Janik, and one from Dave. I think Dave's is by far the weakest one out of the 3, but it doesn't mean it's a bad song by any means.
Yeah, I have to say though, if the chorus were different, it would be on par with the other ones. Maybe even a little better. But the chorus brings it down a couple pegs. Davey, thank you for writing something good.
Yeah, another lyric I really like this song is the "You are planned and you are damned in this brave new world." You saw this song live too, right? They played this during the Final Frontier.
Yeah. They played the first 4 songs on the album in its entirety. They played Wicker Man, Ghost of the Navigator, Brave New World, and then we'll talk about Blood Brothers. They played all 4 of those.
It was amazing.
It was like a Brave New World tour for us.
Yeah. when we saw them in the Final Frontier. We seen the first leg of the Final Frontier tour, and they only played El Dorado off of Final Frontier, and they kind of did like a modern tour where they played songs off of Brave New World, Dance of Death, and A Matter of Life and Death, and
which was awesome.
We had not seen like those songs. Like I never thought I'd see Ghost of the Navigator and Brave New World live, and Then when we get we'll talk about Dance of Death in the second 2 episodes now from the podcast. So they played some songs off there live too. I mean, it was an awesome tour to see.
Another thing about this song too, I just want to mention: Brave New World, no relation to Aldous Huxley's novel. You know, it's not related. The just like we talked about Somewhere in Time and Stranger Strange Land, the concept of what it's about is there.
Yeah, I think that the whole purpose of it's pretty straightforward that they're calling the album Brave New World because of they're bringing the band into a brave new world that they got the original lineup plus Janik back, and they're not going to be like this complacent band to put out an album, here and there, make money off of it because they know their hardcore fans are going to buy it. Like they actually tried to write really good, interesting music, and they did.
Speaking of hardcore fans and having fans, Blood Brothers. What do you think?
I mean, this is like the first song on the album here that's like really powerful. I don't know, like maybe not like the first song, but like this is a Steve epic, but it doesn't feel like an epic. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. It doesn't feel like To Tame a Land. Like it's an epic, but it's like a ballad almost. And he wrote it for his father who had died. Blood Brothers to me it might be the best song that they've written since they've gotten back together. I mean, it's definitely one of the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you, and I think it goes back to what we were saying about Somewhere in Time again. I hate to keep comparing to that, but it's almost like a wasted years. Like this song that has like so much emotion and so much like philosophical. Like,
I think you'll agree with me. This is the best song on the album.
Oh yeah, and that's one thing I wanted to touch on too. We'll talk about it towards the end. The thing about Brave New World is there's not really an epic on it. It's just a bunch of good songs. Like, and that's a great thing. And Blood Brothers, though, man, I mean, amazing. The lyrics are amazing. The melodies are amazing. My favorite line in the song is, when you think that you've used all your chances, the chance to make everything right, keep on making the same old mistakes, makes them tipping the balance so easy. When you're living your life on the edge, say a prayer on the Book of the Dead. And then Janik, like I mentioned earlier, it's not his song, it's Steve's song, but he has like this really cool interlude part, like
it's like a half solo, half just like melodic.
Then his solo in here though, he has a solo too, and his solo is one of his best.
Yeah, probably my favorite part, or one of my favorite parts of the whole Rock in Rio DVD is when they do the clap in the middle when Bruce goes hey hey. Hey, hey. And there's like 100,000 people clapping. Yeah. I think, like not to get too far ahead in the Rock in Rio, because we're going to talk about it like a whole episode, but that's like, to me, like an iconic part of Rock in Rio is when they play this song, and we've seen this song live too now, like three times, I think, and we just saw them in the Book of Souls tour, and this was probably my second favorite song of the whole tour they played live.
It was awesome. I love it. It never gets old. Like Matt said, I mean, you have a song that's going to be in the top 3 of the reunion. It's not going to get old. I mean, it's like as the whole, good as the 80s stuff.
Like the lyrics are just like, the album's almost old enough now that like stuff's starting to become like classic. And this is like a classic song that, Steve wrote. And if you're taking a walk through the garden of life, what do you think you'd expect you to see? Just a mirror reflecting the moves of your life, and in the river, reflections of me. I mean, it's just like a great part. And just for a second, a glimpse of my father I see. In a movement, he beckons to me. And in a moment, the memories are all that remain. And all the wounds are reopening again.
We're blood brothers.
You could just, like, visualize him just, like, reaching out for his father who had died. And he's kind of, like, the song's kind of, like, seeing a reflection of his father and himself. And that's part of what the song's about. And also, nowadays, the meaning, too, is, like, they usually dedicate this song to, like, when we saw him in the Final Frontier tour, they dedicated it to Dio, who had just died. And nowadays, like, in vivo, they dedicated it to the Japanese earthquake victims. And usually it's kind of like their anthem for the Maiden universe as a whole. Like, we're all together, no matter if you live in South America or Asia or Africa or Europe or North America,
Yep.
that you're all connected.
And he goes, and Bruce is like, we're all blood brothers. And then they just start playing it. Like,
So it kind of has like a dual meaning. It's one, it's about Steve's father who died. That's what it was originally written about. Yeah. And secondly, it's like a Maiden fan anthem to say, like, you're all part of one family.
We're the Maiden family.
Yeah. I mean, there's like really like not enough nice things to say about this song. It's like one that I never skip, and so one that I could always listen to.
Another thing about this album we'll talk about later is this is an album that is like unskippable for me. There's not one bad song in this album that I do not listen to. There's 10 amazing songs on here. I skipped none.
I think in terms of like all of Maiden's albums, this one probably has the least bad stuff on it. Like there's really nothing bad on this album.
I agree with you 100%.
It's all like the worst songs like above average still.
Absolutely. The worst song's like a 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
What about The Mercenary?
Yeah, the song's about the movie Predator. If you ever seen the movie, it's really awesome. This is like the most straightforward song on the album, the straightforward rocker. It's really, really good though.
I love it. Another Yannick Gear song. Amazing.
Show them no fear. Show them no pain.
I love my part is my favorite part of the song is hate to kill, die to lose. Hunter hunted, which are you? Diablo come again to make trophies out of men. I love that. That's
nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You've got to kill to stay alive.
That's Predator, right? I mean, that's Predator right there.
It was actually I didn't know the song was about Predator for like years. Like I just didn't know. I never knew what it was about.
It's
like,
so metal.
I just thought it was like about like a generic mercenary who got paid to go like kill people. That's what I thought it was about. And then years later, I heard it was about like Predator, which just makes it even more awesome.
Yeah, that part where he's like, lose your skin, lose your skull. One by one, the sack is full. That part there is Predator, too.
In the heat, dehydrate. Know which breath will be your last.
Nowhere to run. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's basic. It's a basic song. Straightforward. It's like, almost like, I don't know, Peace of Mind comes to mind. Like, as the kind of song that it kind of like reminds me of. Because it's just like a straightforward rocker. You're just getting guitars. You're getting it playing fast. You're it's just cool.
Maiden does that too. We never really kind of touched on this. Maiden does that too, where they kind of just make these songs about like somebody, like a character. Like they have the Trooper. It's about the Crimean War and a trooper and a fighter. They have the Mercenary. It's about a mercenary. It's about Predator. It's about the mercenaries fighting.
They like to put themselves in somebody's shoes, looking out through their eyes, and that's kind of like how they write. I think sometimes you want to write through the person's eyes, and tell you what they'd feel or what they'd see or how they'd, take everything in. And it's like, I think that's one of the best ways to write music. So if you're out there and you're trying to like get into writing music and lyrics, like that's one way to do it is put yourself in somebody's shoes.
Absolutely. And I think they do that. I mean, some of their best songs are based around that stuff. Yeah. I mean, The Duelist is about two people fighting.
Well, even look at Blood Brothers. Like that's written from a first person view. Exactly. Like you can see him like in he looks in a river and he sees a reflection of himself, and it's his father. It's like that's kind of like how it's a good way to write lyrics is put yourself in somebody's eyes. Like you're like literally like looking out through somebody's eyes when you write a song. It's a great way to write. It's like how Maiden does storytelling. They're one of the best storytelling bands.
That's another thing about it is like how did I named that like that? The Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is about basically they're looking at the song through Samuel Taylor Coleridge's eyes and telling the story. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, the Trooper is like another like you said, just like a prime example of storytelling from the first person view. Like you can feel the blood go down his throat. You don't want to say like he can feel his blood go down his throat. Like that doesn't have the same connection. I can feel the blood go down my throat. Exactly, You want to tell from the first person point of view.
Love Yannick Gears. Thank you for the Mercenary, Yannick.
Yeah, like you said, Janik. This is like we've been doing kind of like MVPs of certain albums. Like you could say Janik's the MVP of this album.
I think he is by far because if we're looking at the next song, Dream of Mirrors, that's another Yannick song.
Yeah, we were actually just listening to this song like an hour ago on our way to go eat sushi, and it's one of the most unique songs that Maiden's ever written. And
like Matt and I were talking about in the car, a lot of stuff from Seventh Son can be heard on this, like this real folky, acoustic-y sounding stuff that Bruce and Adrian wanted to do, and now they're doing it. Whatever they did in the 90s just wasn't cutting it, and now this is back to, a mixture of everybody. I think the band became more liberal themselves, too, and allowed each other to influence, stuff.
Well, they're definitely, like, more mature.
Yeah.
and like they were in their early 30s or late 20s during the Seventh Son era. You know, writing like stuff like pretty heady stuff for being in your late 20s, early 30s, and then now like they have an extra 12 years of experience. They're almost middle aged, and you know they're that much more mature and intelligent, and well-rounded.
Yeah, and part of that experience too, man. I want to touch on. You're right. Is you know, Steve had the '90s era of Maiden. He knew that he didn't want it to sound like that. That's why they got Bruce and Adrian back. He went through a learning process. Bruce had a solo career where he had like a couple solo albums that were okay. Chemical Wedding was great, but other than that, I mean, he tried to do something different and not sound like Maiden, but he ended up like his best album sounds like Maiden.
Yeah, Chemical Wedding.
He figured, you know, I might as well just come back, and I think.
Well, he sounded more like Maiden than Maiden did in the '90s.
Yeah, exactly. He did, and I think that just goes to show you that like one of the reasons why they're such a powerful six-piece band is because they wanted to keep everything the same, and they wanted to incorporate the differences now instead of clashing over them and kicking people out of the band like Adrian leaving, Bruce leaving. It's all about like us being a band now.
I think Steve let some of his control go. There's no question that Steve's the leader of the band. It's his band, but the band as a whole is not. He's not the sole owner of the band anymore. Is he let everybody else? He owns like 50% of the band, and then the rest of the band owns like 50%. So they don't do anything unless they're all in it now. And the way they write is that yes, there's a sound of what the band should sound like. It should sound like Iron Maiden, but they get that freedom to write their own stuff.
Absolutely.
And you see that Janik writes his own stuff, and Bruce writes a lot of his own stuff, and Adrian's, when he wants to write a 8 or 9 minute, you know, epic about being in space like Starblind, like he's allowed to do that. Like they have that freedom now.
Absolutely, I think Dream of Mirrors is an example of that too. With like you know, with Yannick coming in and doing his kind of thing.
This song's like a really interesting like song to try to like, you know, analyze, and
like, there's so many pieces in it. There's folky, real soft stuff at the beginning. There's heaviness in it. There's melody in it. There's harmony in it. It's amazing.
It's another song from the first person point of view, like we talked about last time. How to write like a great song is do it from the first person. And I like that part where he says, "All my hopes and expectations, looking for an explanation. Have I found my destination? I just can't take no more."
The dream is true.
The dream is true is like one of my favorite lines.
I think the chorus in this too is an incredibly powerful chorus.
I only dream in black and white. I only dream because I'm alive.
I only dream in black and white to save me from myself. Amazing.
So he's like dreaming. Like, let's analyze like a dream of mirrors. So if you're having a dream and the metaphor is that you're having a dream of mirrors, so you're just like, you don't know what's real, right? So like I almost think of it like you're in a fun house or something. So you see reflections of stuff and everything's you, but it looks different. It doesn't
know who you are.
Yeah.
It goes back to that philosophical stuff we talked about in Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son. It's like trying to figure out who you are as a person. Like what are you about? Same thing with the band. I mean, the band is trying. They're like, this is what we're about now, you know.
Yeah.
And we're gonna write about it, you know.
So like you're having this like dream of like mirrors, and you're like lost now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, you see all these reflections, you don't know which way to go. And I think that's just like a metaphor for life. Is that like whoever wrote the lyrics of the song? I don't know if it was Janik or Steve. Usually like writes a lot of the lyrics to Janik's songs. Janik writes the music. It's kind of like Steve. Steve was like, it almost sounds like he was worried about relapsing into like a nightmare. And it says, lost in a dream of mirrors, lost in a paradox, lost in time is spinning, lost in nightmare I retrace. So like it's almost like a relapse that you're like falling back into an old way of thinking or an old bad habit. And that's something that I think everybody can relate to at some point in their life.
Absolutely. I think that it also might have been a way for him to express like the 90s. To get that out, you know, like I don't want to go back to what it was, you know, I kind of don't want to have a dream of mirrors. I want this to be something completely different than the 90s. I want this to be, like going back to what we said about Wicker Man, like this is the shadow of the Wicker Man rising up again. I want it to be a rebirth. I want it to be, and thankfully it turned out that way. Steve might have had doubts, like Bruce and Adrian coming back, I don't know how it's going to be, but we're going to try it, and, you know, thankfully it turned out to be amazing.
The one thing, too, about having that fear of, like, falling back into an old way or getting back into a bad habit or something like that is that you have to recognize, you have to, like, come to terms with that it's a real problem.
Yeah.
And that's what you kind of see in the song, is that he recognizes, you have to recognize the problem before you can fix it or avoid it. And, at the end he says, the dream is true, the dream is true.
And just like you said before, man, it's about recognizing your problem. And I think it also said, like you mentioned before, it's about realizing that sometimes you have to let go of control and let other people do what they want to do and not try to control everybody. And I think that was the problem in the first place. So maybe, like I said, it's just for him to exercise his demons to a certain extent.
What do you think about like this album here? When they played Rock in Rio, the first 6 songs on the album are the first 6 songs they played live. So does that make the album like top heavy, or kind of at like the midpoint of the album here almost? A little past, but
no, I don't think so. I think one of the things about this album that I think is just beautiful the way it's constructed is, I don't think this album's top heavy at all. I think every single song on here is just it's perfectly placed. I would not change the order on this at all.
I think this is the most well done album that they've done in terms of like listenability.
Absolutely.
And flow. And I know your brother, this is his favorite album.
Yeah, this is my kid brother, my only brother, my younger brother. Matt, shout out to you, man. If you're listening to the podcast, this is his favorite album. And I remember when he actually came to the tour with us when we saw these first 4 songs off of this plate, he was just blown away. I mean, he loves.
That was his tour, yeah.
We had our Somewhere Back in Time tour, and my brother Matt Labrie with his tour. This was for you, man. You loved it. So
I've actually met other people who they said that out of the whole Iron Maiden catalog, this is their favorite album, which speaks to Maiden. As great as their 80s stuff was, that they're able to put out albums that are people's favorites. And
like I said, man, we talked about the rebirth and the Renaissance, and we just said it at the beginning of this podcast. We listen to this as much, if not more, than the 80s stuff. And like you said, man, that's a testament to the band.
Yeah, because we got into Maiden after Dance of Death had just been released, so we didn't have that chance of only listening to 80s stuff and then new stuff coming out after that. It was just right there alongside the 80s stuff, and it held up just as well as the 80s stuff did just listening to it.
And to go back and touch on what you said, the first couple songs that you played for me were some songs from the 80s, and honestly, you played me 2 or 3 songs from this album.
Yeah.
You played me Wicker Man, Ghost of the Navigator, and Brave New World. Or Mercenary, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. I was into it.
You gravitated towards, that stuff as much as you did the 80s stuff.
Exactly. And that's why I'm a fan of both today,
That's why I think, without Brave New World, without this album, being so awesome, that I don't know what would have happened to Maiden. I don't know if Janik would have left the band. I don't know if maybe, they were just disbanded. They were pretty distraught after 10 years of mediocre success. I mean, maybe you love Fear of the Dark album, maybe you liked X Factor, all that stuff. You can't deny that Maiden was less than they were before that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely, like we said earlier, man, this is the Maiden lineup now. I mean, this is 2018. This has been the Maiden lineup since 1999, almost 20 years. This album didn't immediately bring them back up to their current level, but it definitely changed the trajectory that they started going up again. Exactly. What about The Fallen Angel?
This album's just rock. It's just metal, but it's rock too. It's just straightforward, that opening riff.
I love it. I love the lyrics too, man. Adrian again, my boy Adrian. You are the man. He only has 2 writing credits on this album because he just came back, but still amazing. I mean, his 2 songs on here are fantastic.
It's one of the hardest songs that they've done. The
heaviest.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really just.
I love Bruce at the beginning too, just screaming the vocals. Cecil is beside you, and it's again. Demons are inside you, and they're making the play. I love it.
I mean, Bruce vocally is as good as he ever was on this album. I don't know what else to say. I mean, he just he kicked a lot of ass.
Watching in there hiding or something like that to wait for a sign, for the devil to get ready to take over your mind.
You and only God would know what could be done. You and only God would know I am the only one.
You and only God would know what could be done. You and only God would know I am the chosen one. Little Seventh Son vibe action there.
Yeah, this is another song I mentioned with Wicker Man, and I mentioned with Ghost of the Navigator, and you see it in Brave New World, that these changing ideas throughout a song. The hardest thing to do in a song is bridge between different ideas and different melodies, and Maiden is playing with it they just mastered it now. They're just going from one to the other idea, and right after that chorus, you get the Could it be it's the end of our world, all the things we cherish and love, nothing left but to face this all on my own, because I am the chosen one.
I love that part. I love the chorus in the song so much.
And then they go back to that beginning, like that.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. You know, I mean, and the imagery here, man. Like we talked about it before. I mean, it's about, you know, the fallen angel. Who's the fallen angel? Like it's
Lucifer.
Yeah, it's Lucifer. It's very Seventh Son sounding. It's very horror. See, we talked about how it's a mixture of old stuff. It has that horror stuff that's like Number of the Beast-esque. It has the Chosen One, life and death, good versus evil mentality of Seventh Son. And it has the heaviness and the, you know, the catchiness of stuff from like Peace of Mind or like Power Slave, Rocky, like 2 Minutes to Midnight or Aces High. Like it's a mixture of all that stuff. And that's what's so great about this album. This is a song that showcases that, and like we've mentioned in all the other songs before this, like they've united. A lot of bands can't do that, and Maiden just unites the best parts of everything they've done to this point and puts it in this album. It's unbelievable.
Like, this is what makes this album, you know, better than almost, you know, any other album that they've done, is that it's just like every song they put that much effort in. There's no letdown on this album. There's no like mediocre.
This album, I mean, it's fairly new in terms of like the scope of heavy metal. I mean, It's only 18 years old, but I can guarantee you 20 years from now, that's going to be one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time.
Yeah, we were talking about it the other day about how, like, this album's like classic now. Brave New World, like the Maiden, when they got back together as a reunion, it's like a classic. Like Seventh Son was for us, you know, when we listened to it in the early 2000s. This is farther away than Seventh Son was to us when we first started listening to Maiden.
Exactly.
It was only, 15 years before we started listening to Maiden? Now this is 18 years after. Like, this is a classic Iron Maiden album.
Absolutely.
It's the only one out of the new stuff that I would say is classic.
I agree.
So far.
I agree. A couple more years, Dance of Death, and move into that slot.
Maybe Matter Life Death will too. And, like, this is... If you're an Iron Maiden fan, you probably love this album.
Absolutely. What about The Nomad? Rider of the Ancient Beast, Nomad.
This is a Davey song. I think Davey's obviously best song, I think, on the album is The Nomad.
I love Nomad, man. I love it. The riff is incredible.
This is, I think, kind of like a template that Maiden will use to write other epics here. Absolutely. Like the modern Iron Maiden epics. It reminded me of Tame the Land a lot.
Sort of. And he has that kind of vibe too, like... Yeah,
like the images you get listening to the Nomad, or like you could just see him, like, it's almost like Led Zeppelin Kashmir, like Land, sort of. Where he's just going through like a desert and he's just...
Like you said, man, Dune. I mean, Tame the Land, that's exactly what it reminds me of too. If it was comparable to any early Maiden song, it's definitely Tame the Land by far. I mean, that's another Davey song where he has that solo, you know, to Tame the Land. So, I mean, it's...
If no one dares to even look or glance your way, your reputation goes before you, they all say. Like a spirit that can disappear at will, many claim of things, but no one's seen you kill.
No.
So this Nomad character is like this mysterious guy just wandering, you know, from town to town in like the desert, out in like, I don't know if it's like Mongolia area, like kind of like Central Asia, just going between, you know, towns, and he's like this bad dude that nobody wants to mess with, but nobody knows his story.
Nothing about the song I Live 2 Minutes, the epicness of it, like you said, the transitions in it are awesome. There's so many different parts where Bruce is really quiet singing, really aggressive singing, very melodic sounding with harmonies and the guitars. I mean, it's just like there's so many pieces to the songs, I believe.
Yeah, just like I've been saying about, like, compared to every other or all the other four Maiden albums that came before this, is how interesting it is. And it's even more interesting than like a lot of the 80s stuff. There's only a couple of songs I would say in the 80s that had that transitional ideas, and like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner did, or songs like that. Now in like the modern Maiden, that's what kind of they do all the time. And Nomad's like one of those. I love that part, the slow part, that middle to end slow part when those guitars are real light and it just builds and builds up, and like that's my favorite part of the song.
Nice part. He says, "No man, you're the rider of the desert sands," and the guitar's like, I love that part.
Yeah. This is like, it's one of the more underrated songs of modern Maiden, I think.
It's incredible. Davey kills it on this. I mean, And
I think it's probably Davy's second best song he's written since Reunion, probably after Benny Drake.
I was going to say, sadly, he only has a couple more spots in his writing where he actually shines. He has 3 writing credits on this, and I think every album after this he only has like 1. So his writing starts to diminish a little bit as he progresses. But
maybe this is my second favorite of Davy songs. Looking back, I go one at the ends probably. Maybe I might like a little more. I don't know. It's tough to say. I will say that the only downside to the Nomad is that instrumental part in the middle. I think they should have ended the song on that. They should have maybe extended it a little bit more and just ended the song. I don't like how they go back into the verse and then the chorus. It just feels too much.
Yeah,
so I would say that's like a downside to the song is that I would have composed the song a little different and just ended it on the middle instrumental part.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But it's still a really, really good song.
What about Out of the Silent Planet? Yannick Gibbs.
This is one of Bruce's best vocal performances on the album song. Like it's like withered hands, withered bodies, begging for salvation, deserted by the hand of gods of their own creation. I mean, the lyrics in this album are like, I mean, they're right up there with Seven Son. It's the best lyrical album that to date. I mean, to date, as in this album coming out. I think like maybe modernly, like A Matter of Life and Death has really, really great lyrics too. But those are like the 3 albums I think that are like the best 3 lyrical albums they've ever done.
My favorite line in the song is, "Nations cry underneath decaying skies above. You are guilty. Yeah. The punishment is death for all who live."
He says it again.
The punishment is death for all who live.
They did a great job with the chorus here. It's kind of like a hybrid of like, they repeat Out of the Silent Planet, but then they also have those like dreams of decimation, Out of the Silent Planet, come the demons of creation, Out of the Silent Planet, dreams of decimation. I mean, it's like, my other favorite part of this song is the killing fields, the grinding wheels, crushed by equilibrium, separate lives, no more disguise, no more second chances. I mean, haggard wisdom spitting out the bitter taste of hate. I accuse you before you know the crime is all too late.
Before you know the crime, it's all too late.
It's like, the lyrics are just like...
unbelievable.
Yeah.
This is my brother's favorite song on the album. This is probably his favorite Iron Maiden song of all time, and it's understandable why. I mean... So Matt, shout out to you, man. Out of the Silent Planet, your favorite song. There it is. We just talked about it. Another thing about this song is, too, it's based on the C.S. Lewis books of the Space Trilogy. It's the first book in the trilogy. And, amazing.
I like the chorus, how they kind of like, they layer Bruce's vocals together. They do like, it's like 2 or 3 of his vocal layered, and it sounds like amazing when he says like Out of the Silent Planet.
It's ridiculous. It's this album, man. I mean, there's nothing but good things.
It's like a progressive feel, but it's still like just a kind of like a straightforward metal rock kind of sound.
Absolutely,
but it in a way, like we talked about this album being a mixture of old Maiden, like classic Maiden, like a little bit of you can hear like Virtual 11 bridging into this because the progressive ideas, the energy of it. It's almost to me like the Number of the Beast, where it doesn't sound like the rest of modern Maiden. What we haven't said is that like this album does not sound like Dance of Death. This album does not sound like A Matter of Life and Death. It does not sound like Final Frontier or Book of Souls. This album is its own unique blend of just like creative energy. Like they all got back together, and it was just like they just threw it together, and it just came out. Like. They didn't think about it too much. They weren't, together writing before. It was just a unique, transcendent kind of thing that happened when they wrote Brave New World.
Another thing about Brave New World I want to mention before I forget is no more Martin Birch. Remember, he left in '92. Steve produced all these albums in the '90s pretty much after Fear of the Dark on his own, and that Born we talked about on previous podcasts. This is the first album with a new producer, Kevin Shirley, who is their current producer. He's worked on this album from 2000. He did Dance of Death. He's done Matter of Life and Death, Final Frontier, and The Book of Souls most recently in 2015. And he's a hell of a producer.
We'll talk about production here in a little bit, but I think this production blows away anything from the 90s, that's for sure.
Absolutely. What about the thin line between love and hate?
Yeah, this is like maybe the least Maiden-like songs they've ever like written. Like it's kind of like not only does it sound different, the lyrics are different.
This to me is one of the most underrated Iron Maiden songs of all time. I mean, There's people who say they don't like it for whatever reason. I think it's a fantastic song. It's one of my favorite songs on the album.
But it is a song that I'll admit, and you might admit too, though, the first time you listen to the Brave New World record, you listen to this song last, and you're like, wait a minute, this is different. This isn't Maiden that I'm used to.
I love the lyrics though. I love the chorus too when Bruce just screams it, man. I love it. I will hold, my soul will fly, and he says, and I will live forever. I love that part.
Yeah, I said earlier about Nomad being Davey's second best. This is probably his second best song out of the modern Maiden. It's composed in a way that's like really, really interesting to listen to, and it never gets old.
It doesn't. And it has that Seventh Son vibe too. Like when I listen to it, me personally, I think of myself. Like when I think about it, like this song resonates with me on a personal level. Like I sit there and I just think like, what am I doing with my life? Am I being like, because some of the lyrics in the song is like, when a person turns to wrongs, it'll want to be belong. Part of things at any cost, what price of life is lost. At what point do we begin, fighter spirit will to win? What makes a man decide to take the wrong or righteous road? That's like a Seventh Son kind of thing too, and I love it. I love the way it's executed. When I sit there and I think of the song, I used to park at college, and I'd have to park in like a parking lot where a grocery store used to be, and I'd walk like 6 or 7 blocks to school when I was going to college, and I would just listen to Thin Line Between Love and Hate like on repeat as I walked back and forth to school, and it just put me in like this great mood. It's just like, this song is really uplifting. This song is really makes you think about your life. And when I was at a university studying, it really made me think about like, I'm doing the right thing here. I'm going to get an education. I'm going to better myself. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. And without this song, I mean,
yeah, it's kind of like the song about your like own mortality. He says, "I will hope, my soul will fly, so I will live forever. Heart will die, my soul will fly, and I will live forever." So he's kind of like contemplating his own like mortality here, and he's like, in the earlier song it said about man will choose the wrong or righteous road, and there's a reason why that you should live the right way.
Absolutely.
Because maybe even if you don't believe in an afterlife, that your soul lives forever, what you do does live forever, and your actions and the way it affects people, and the way it affects people's lives that you might not even realize while you're alive.
I agree with you, and I think that that's a good point you bring up, because Maiden will play with this idea of how do you live your life. A song that came to mind when you were just reciting that part, is The Legacy. The Legacy is like similar to this, with that kind of idea of, do good while you still can, or do evil while you still can.
It's kind of the opposite. The guy laying on his deathbed, like, hey, man, I screwed up.
Exactly. And it's kind of like that same idea. It plays with it. Like, what do you do in your life? Like you said, it affects people. Like, what you do affects certain people. I love this song.
Yeah, it says, at what age begin to learn of which way out we will turn? There's a long and winding road, and the trail is there to burn. So you're off, it's kind of saying you're off on your own, and you pick your own way in life. And the way that you go affects you as a person, and affects other people around you.
Yeah, you blaze your own trail is basically what that line means, You gotta blaze your own trail.
No, it's like that. There's a thin line between love and hate, wider divide that you can see between good and bad. There's a gray place between black and white, but everyone does have the right to choose the path that he takes. So there's this, kind of like we talked about Seventh Son, about this free will versus like destiny. And this is what this song about. Like, we have a free will to choose, between good and bad, but we also have a destiny at the end, and you want to get there the right way.
Yeah, this is one of the songs that I'm really mostly connected to too. I mean, it's one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs. On a personal level, it really hits home, and it really.
I love the way the guitars sound in this song too. Like, they're not like super heavy, but they just have that nice like crunch feel to them. Mm-hmm. And Davey's solo in like the middle, when it comes back to the when he kind of plays the melodic, the thin line between love and hate, but he plays on the guitar like the melody. It's one of the best parts of the song.
When you talk about that part of the song where Bruce just is belting it, the thin line between love and hate, then you said that crunchiness comes out, and then it's like, wow.
It's a song, like, if you're out there and you haven't really listened to Brave New World in a while, and maybe you never gave this song much of a chance, like, go and give it another chance and listen to it, and you'll see like how good it is.
This song here is something that really, if Adrian and Bruce would have stayed in the band in the 80s, this would have been something they would have wrote. I mean, this is a definite, like Matt said, it's really progressive and it's really, really different. And it just sounds like nothing they've ever done. It's like it's unbelievable. I love.
Yeah, I don't think it's like too far out there to say that this song is the most underrated Iron Maiden song.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. It's definitely underrated. I love it. Speaking of the thin line between love and hate, do we love or hate this album? I mean, where do we sit? I mean, let's talk about
listenability.
Listenability.
10 out of 10. I mean, it's the most listenable. I think it's the most listenable Iron Maiden album, period.
And the thing that's great about this, too, is saying it's 10 out of 10. There's 10 songs on the album. You can listen to every one. That's 10 out of 10.
Check mark next to every one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about artwork? Let's talk about artwork.
The cover is probably the most different out of every Iron Maiden cover. Not in a bad way, necessarily, but it just has Eddie's face in like a purple cloud.
That's
above
like a bluish.
London. Yeah. Above London.
It's like a futuristic London.
So, it is like the most different Eddie out of any Iron Maiden.
What I read was, when I was looking at the cover and doing some research on it, I've been doing it for years and I see a bunch of different things, but the most common thing that I've seen about the cover was Eddie is supposed to be a storm above the city of London. And it's like Iron Maiden's back in this new futuristic London, and they're going to take the world by storm. Like, that's kind of what
I can see that.
Yeah. I love the way Eddie looks as like the storm and like a cloud.
There's like lightning bolts, it's like a future. It's like a futuristic London.
Yeah, it's futuristic London. It's like really spacey kind of looking. It kind of looks like almost like a space colony or something floating.
Yeah, it gives that progressive feel.
Yeah, sort of a progressive feel, but it's in London. Derek Riggs does the sleeve illustration. Steve Stone, I think, is the guy who does the futuristic one, if I'm not mistaken. And,
that was computer generated, like he did in like a CGI.
Yeah, and there's a guy called Peacock who does the design. There's a bunch of people working on this together who do a lot of things.
I mean, what would you say, just talking about the album cover, where does that rank in your all-time Maiden covers, though?
The thing about it is, I love it.
It's hard to judge, isn't it?
It's hard to judge because it's not classic like the other ones are.
Even the modern, like you look at like Final Frontier or Book of Souls, like, yeah, they're modern Maiden, but they're in the vein of the classic album.
Exactly. This is not like that. It's hard for me to decide. I give the artwork. Well, let's talk about the singles first before I give the artwork. What about the Wicker Man single? I
mean, the actual single cover is just them standing there with Bruce holding a torch.
Yeah, it's great. What about the special edition?
I don't want to sit there and judge Bruce's face. I don't know. Bruce looks about 42 here. No,
the special edition is awesome.
Yeah, that Wicker Man picture.
We just talked about how the cover doesn't fit in the classic vein. That reminds me of Run to the Hills almost, that cover, with the Wicker Man Eddie there and like all the people around him. It reminds me of Run to the Hills.
It's one of the better single covers, I think, out of that Maiden's done. And Eddie's a Wicker Man. He's on fire, and he's looking down at those people. And you can kind of see, like, if you want to use it like a symbolic way, like they're lighting Eddie on fire again, like they're relaunching the band here.
Mm-hmm. I think who did did Derek Riggs do that as well? Did he do the artwork for that?
I'm not sure. It doesn't. Looking up the picture here, it doesn't say.
You know what I think it might have been?
It says here it was done by Mark Wilkinson.
Mark Wilkinson is the guy who also did the Book of Souls cover.
It actually says Derek Riggs' art piece was rejected by the band.
There we go. Mark Wilkinson is the guy who did the Book of Souls cover, so he does a heck of a job here too. And then Out of the Silent Planet, was that Riggs or was that Mark Wilkinson again? If I'm not mistaken, I think that one might have been Riggs.
No, it was Mark Wilkinson again.
It was Mark Wilkinson again? Yeah, you're right. It is. So there you go.
Mark had the touch here in the early 2000s up till modern times. He said he did Book of Souls too. Yeah.
He also did Nostradamus by Judas Priest, just to throw that out there.
I mean, some of Derek Riggs' stuff in the 90s wasn't really that great, honestly.
He kind of lost his touch after Seventh Son, it seems.
Artists, I'm not an artist, but like I think they go through periods where they're like have these like really transcendent, unique ideas in their early ages, and then they kind of go through this slump of really bad stuff they put out. They try to be different, but people don't like it. Maybe you're kind of like a victim of your own success, sort of thing. But lately, I know they go to Derek Riggs for picking out modern artwork for the band. He's one of the people, the voices that they listen to when they do cover art. So they still respect Derek Riggs a lot.
Absolutely. And that special edition cover by Mark Wilkinson's awesome, where he's like standing at the podium it's Eddie with the long hair. There's like planets and galaxies and stuff behind him. There's a podium with Eddie's head on it. It says "Out on the Sound Planet" on the front. There's people taking pictures and a bunch of like photographers.
Yeah, I don't know if that's supposed to be like a press conference or if it's. I think it's more like a like 1984 kind of like dictator giving a speech or something.
It is. And then there's the other cover too, like the traditional cover. That's not the special edition, which is basically the Storm Eddie, the face. He's holding a planet Earth in his hands. That's
I think they're kind of saying like Maiden's taking over the world.
Exactly. And I like that cover too. It's more simplistic, but it's pretty cool.
I like it a lot better than the Wicker Man one, where they're just standing there.
Absolutely. In terms of the art, if you include the special editions and stuff, I'd give the single art, if you're including the special editions and stuff like that, I'm giving that like a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
If you're just including like the cover art in itself, I give that sleeve like we were talking about earlier, because it's so like different. It's hard to. I give it like a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so I was thinking 7. 7 was the number in my head.
So if you take in all the art in its entirety, I'm thinking like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think like 7.5, but
7.5, 8. I mean that's pretty much where I'm at too. Now production. This album was recorded. I think we mentioned this previously at Guillaume Tell Studios in Paris, which the studio would use for the Book of Souls.
Yeah.
The band would use that studio for the Book of Souls. Really great sound in this studio. Kevin Shirley, the producer we talked about, is the new guy. He nails it. Amazing.
The guitars sound great. Music sounds thick and clear and
he's
rich.
On par with Martin Birch's stuff in the 80s from Maiden. I mean, he's a great producer. They're still using him today. He's a fantastic producer.
I mean, you like listen to a couple minutes of Brave New World and then go listen to Virtual 11 and just see like a 2-year difference between those albums, but they sound like worlds apart.
Absolutely. Kevin Shirley. And that was Bruce's idea. I remember when Bruce rejoined the band, there's an interview I saw. He said, what I wanted to do was make sure we recorded this and had it produced right, because he never liked the sound that was in the barn. Rightfully so, like Matt just said. You listen.
It sounds like it was in a barn.
It does. And when they get Kevin, they do it right, and they've been using him ever since. But all right, man. I'm gonna let you rank first.
Oh well, I wasn't even thinking like what number I was gonna give the whole album. See, like usually in the '90s stuff here, I gave the lowest I gave was Seven Son. I gave it a 9.3.
You mean in the '80s?
Yeah, in the '80s stuff, I gave Seven Son a 9.
I think you gave it 9.2
or 9.2. Is that?
I gave it 9.3. Yeah.
Okay, and like it's hard because I like this album more than I like Seven Son, so I have to give it like. I'm gonna give it.
My head.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it I'm getting it at a 9.5 out of 10. I'm putting it on the same level as like a Number of the Beast.
I'm gonna give it a 9.4 out of 10. That's the number I had. The reason I give it a little bit less than Number of the Beast, and the reason I give it a little bit less than like Peace of Mind, because I like that a little bit more, is the thing that doesn't make it a 9.5 or above for me. As amazing as the album is, listenability's flawless. The artwork's so-so. The epic, the lack of an epic, is where I kind of give it a 9.4, because as much the albums, every song on here is great. I mean, they're great. They're all 8 or 9s. But I don't think there's one song on here that's a 10. I think it's an 8 or 9.
The closest thing would probably be Blood Brothers.
Absolutely.
And though it doesn't have a classic Maiden epic, it is a longer song. Mm-hmm. But it's more of kind of like a ballad epic.
Exactly. And for me, that's why it's a 9.4. That being said, though, I gave Seven Son a 9.3. So like you, I like this album more than Seven Son.
Yeah, I do too. And I think this is like upper tier Iron Maiden music. This is top shelf Iron Maiden.
Most of their albums in the reunion are on par with the 80s stuff, if not, in some cases, like this album, better than some of the 80s stuff.
Yeah.
So, let us know what you think, guys, about Brave New World. We gave it a 9.4 for me. Matt gave it a 9.5. Amazing album. We love it. Like we said before, we're going to talk about, Rock in Rio, part 2 of the Brave New World album, where we get to talk about that concert, maybe a little bit of our own experience with that, sort of. But let us know what you think. Listen to Brave New World. Check it out. Guarantee you, it'll blow you away. 6-piece Maiden. Amazing. Thanks for listening to A Matter of Life of Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I'm Joe Labriola.
And I'm Matt Wagner.
Next time, Rock in Rio. Have a good one, guys. Take care.